Generations Bank has been serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Generations combines the best of modern banking with dedication to the local community. Visit them at mygenbank.com. Generations Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender.
All right, everybody, welcome into Concrete Jungle, a New York baseball podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Paul Russo here, Kyle Evans here with me as well, as always. Been an interesting week for both the Mets and Yankees. Things, I would say, during what is a very important portion of the season, obviously, Kyle, in the playoff run for both these teams, not going exactly to plan. Hasn't been the worst, but at the same token, not the best.
Yeah, I would say average for both teams. Mets are 3-3 on their trip. Yankees are kind of just hovering around 500 this month, not taking care of the schedule that they had with a lot of teams under 500 that they should beat, which is why the Orioles are still just a game back, and we're going to move on with a very tight race for the next, 28 games, but I think like 32 days.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a tight one. That was on the heels, at least with the Yankees anyway, of having a multi-game lead for the first time in the division since late June, I believe it was. That obviously has been fluctuating pretty much as well because I guess luckily, at least in the Yankee case here, Baltimore continues to just kind of be a mystery. They've been struggling still as well for the most part, so it's, I guess, a little bit of yin and yang in a sense in that category. But let's kind of dive right in. You mentioned, right, Kyle, both teams pretty much sitting at 500 through the past 7 days. The Yankees handled business with Colorado, didn't get a sweep, but won the series. Kind of have to take a little bit of the good with the bad there, but this National Series, they lose that, and there's some trends within that we'll get into, right? But at least on the surface, right, not a great look against a team that, for all purposes, probably out of the playoff picture. Still pesky enough to probably cause issues like this every now and then here, but, for the Yankees, like we mentioned last week, that this was more or less a had-to-have-it series.
Yeah, there's been a lot of these series this month where they've taken 2 out of 3, but it's really not good enough considering how bad some of these teams are. Like the White Sox had to have been a sweep, and it wasn't. The Angels, you remember they lost 2 or 3 to them early in August, and then they go and win the opener here, and they can't get one of the final 2. Mm-hmm. And the crazy part is they had so many opportunities to, have a chance to come back in both games, both nights, runners in scoring position. They just couldn't get the hit, and Aaron Judge was held homerless for 3 games, which is he hasn't done, I think I read, in like 2.5 weeks. So Stanton didn't do much. I think other than Jazz Chisholm, there wasn't really many contributors.
Yeah. And Chisholm, I think it's a good platform in diving board to kind of go off on this because it's interesting that Jazz, a lefty hitter, had maybe the most success against lefty pitching in this series. And this has become one of the troubling trends of sorts here that really lately, but probably really traceable all through the season, that the Yankees have trouble with is left-handed pitching. Washington has a plethora of that in their rotation, and the Yankees got kind of the full bore of it, if you will. It's kind of interesting. I kind of chuckled at the Patrick Corbin stuff the other night, only because he's been, well, there's no way around it. He has been the worst starting pitcher in baseball the past 3 seasons, I believe. And he's kind of righted the ship in a weird way recently. And he was, for the most part, making the Yankees look pretty desperate up there. And it's, like I mentioned, it's a bit of a troubling sign because the Yankees appear to have this struggle with left-handed pitching here. Like I mentioned, especially lately, but probably traceable, deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean, had they hit just a little more, it would have been a totally different series. Their pitching struggled at times. Like yesterday, Carlos Rodon struggled early, but he settled in and gave them, enough to stay in the game. And they couldn't get anything done, which is so crazy because you look at that team, their pitching. I mean, even Kyle Finnegan lately has been struggling, and they had some hits off from him, but they just can't get the hit to bring anyone home. And it's frustrating, and it's weird because the Yankees have a really good record against teams over 500, but all these teams that are struggling, they just
Play to
it's like they go in and
right.
they take them lightly. I think that's what's happening here.
Play to their level.
Yeah, and making the Nationals look good. Like the Nationals don't hit many home runs, and they hit several in this series. So yeah, it was frustrating. And I really do wonder again if is this the series that's going to cost them?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and hopefully that's not the case. One of the other trends that I do want to talk about, one of the bad trends anyway, you mentioned Carlos Rodon, and admittedly, still a pretty good start overall in the grand scheme of it, but one of the main things this year, that even since he's come back and everything, first inning for him is a real trouble point. And again, that was the case yesterday. It's weird because I feel like it's a little bit of like a career thing with him now looking back on it. The more I was thinking about it, right, that first innings for him kind of tend to be a little bit of a struggle. It's just that it's really been amped up lately. Again, I don't know if it's just the tightened race for the division at this point or anything like that, but it certainly seems to be heightened the early troubles within these starts that he tends to have. And it's something we talked a little bit about obviously last week and again this week. The Yankee bullpen, really this is more of a generalized baseball statement, obviously, right? But, these not going beyond 6-inning starts at this point, and I'm going to be generous by calling them 6-inning starts, is really, to me, I still think most of these pitchers should be getting to 7. But, really you aren't getting to 6 consistently. Really taxes the bullpen, and you kind of saw a little bit of ramifications of that within the past week. We'll get more to that, obviously, when we update the rosters and everything, but, it's one of those things where you hope Rodon it's tough calling it, figure it out at this stage, right, just late in the season, but maybe gets on a run where, just the way baseball ebbs and flows, that he can get through this first inning and not have issues, right, and not more or less tank the back end of his starts at this point.
Yeah, that's really been the theme all year. I can think even back in June in Boston, when he gave up 6 runs in the first 2 innings. I don't know what it is. I know a lot of guys around the league do have these troubles. I remember like Jordan Montgomery, Jamison Tyone when they were with the Yankees, they had bad first inning ERAs, and really that's a major thing here because when the Yankees don't score first, they're like 22-37. So, and they have one of the worst records when trailing after the first inning. So the first inning is very important.
Yeah.
It literally changes the complexion of the game, and it just felt like they fell down early, and it wasn't a good start last night. And you just saw what was coming, and they need him. They need him because he'll definitely be part of that rotation in the postseason. And with the money he's making, he's got to perform better. And like you said, I will add too. You're right about the starters. With all these bad teams they face, but these bad offenses just this month, their starters, no reason why Stroman only went 5 against the Rockies. No reason why Cole only went 5 against the Nationals. That's just inexcusable. You're wasting your bullpen in August.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to really, in my mind, call him out in this sense, right? But like Will Warren, again.
Yeah, how is he getting another start?
When he gets called, when he's been up. It's kind of funny. The name we haven't mentioned is Nestor. Nestor seems to be the one in the past, at least few go-arounds in the rotation, that's kind of at least carried them at least into the 6th inning, more or less, which is kind of crazy to talk about considering we still have open questions about when Clark Schmidt comes back and Luis Heel when he comes back, where Nestor's role kind of truly lies. It's one of those things. I didn't necessarily have it on my notes. I do want to bring up one thing, though. You brought up, they were able to put a dent into Finnegan. Gleyber Torres, now we've seen him in the leadoff spot for an extended period of time. And it's worked out pretty well, numerically speaking. But back-to-back nights, he ends the game at the plate. And it's tough. I think it's one of those, like, I have to kind of laugh at it a little bit, just, seeing Juan Soto's reaction at the end of the game last night anyway. Just tough spots. And you mentioned more specifically, obviously, that the Yankees were making inroads on Finnegan, especially last night. And Glaber killed that back-to-back nights.
Yeah, I definitely would want Juan Soto up there over Glaber, but one thing about Juan, too, is he had an awful series. And take away, again, you can't do this, but I'm just saying, take away the home runs over his last 17 games, which have been great. He has 9 of them. He's hitting 194. I get it. Every hitter's going to go through a cold stretch, except for Judge, apparently.
Clearly.
I guess he cooled off a little bit in the series.
He is in a cold stretch right now.
Compared to what he's been doing, but he still had a hit, last night and the night before. But yeah, Soto didn't do much either in the series, and you know what happens with this team when Judge and Soto don't go, the team doesn't go, and that was the problem the last 2 nights. Judge should have, like I said, a hit, RBI double, but other than that, nobody was contributing.
Yeah,
other guys have to step up.
Yeah, and we'll get to at least some stuff here on the horizon here in a second. Do want to mention Judge? Again, have to kind of eat my words again, even a little bit from last week, because even with this 2-game cold stretch, still on pace to at least match his numbers from 2022 in the home run count. Just again, kind of crazy what he's been doing. I don't know another way really around it. Don't know other way to really describe it at this point outside of just some insane stuff. And I feel bad for the small market teams here. I'm going to go out on a proverbial limb. Sarcasm needed here. Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, just MVPs, I'm assuming at this point, right? Like, what they're both doing at this point is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Of course, I'm going to sound biased here, but people are I see it all over, are saying that what Ohtani is doing is harder. I think that's absolutely crazy, considering hitting that many home runs and doing it at this pace and hitting 380 over the stretch too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not more impressive than a guy just stealing bases and hitting homers. This Aaron Judge is keeping his average among the highest in the league while doing it.
I mean, I see both arguments.
Stealing a base, really, if you're fast like he is, you're going to steal bases. It's
I mean, I always say it because I think, the stolen base element's kind of crazy, the fact that he's at 40-40. We had a 40-70 last year with Acuna. So it's like, I think, I don't know, it's tough. I think it depends really, one of those, like, I'm going to have to make my final decision at the end of the year only because I want to see what the final totals are. You know what I mean? And then I think maybe I can make an outright decision at that point. Let's get into some updates here on the Yankees side of things. Luis Gil threw a bullpen session on Sunday, then threw 65 pitches in live batting practice with AA Somerset on Tuesday. Rehab start scheduled for Saturday as it stands right now. Again, mentioned he'll be pretty much right back into the rotation, I would assume, as long as everything goes good. Saturday actually is 3 days before he's allowed off to be activated off the injured list. I would imagine as long as everything goes good there, he'd probably be activated right away since it was only a 15-day stint on the IL, and he's pretty much been throwing the whole time.
Yeah, and please come back and be good again.
Yeah.
Because that would be huge for the rotation.
Mm-hmm. All right. On the horizon here, as I've kind of alluded to, Anthony Rizzo played defensively in the field back-to-back days, Tuesday and then yesterday on Wednesday with AA Somerset. Things are looking good. He's apparently close to full strength and a possible return to the MLB roster. I mentioned last week that he would be taking at bats at DH, and it appears, at least as it stands right now, this Rizzo return is pretty imminent, I'd say. Nothing obviously official on what date exactly it would be, but everything that's been kind of coming out about him indicates that we are really more closer to sooner than anything else with him.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Definitely an upgrade in my mind over Ben Rice, who actually has not been playing a lot. They continue to stick with the vet. DJ LeMahieu, who just continues to do nothing. 0 for 5 the other night, another 0 for 3 last night, then gets pinched hit. Smart move by Boone. Don't know why he couldn't do it the night before. And yeah, I would love to have Rizzo back every day. Just his presence alone in the lineup makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, it would be huge. We've kind of hypothesized a little bit about that on here, I know, and yeah, it would be pretty big. I think it kind of answers your cleanup slash 5-hole slot pretty immediately, and definitely solidifies up defensively at first base. So
Yeah.
be big. All right, Ian Hamilton. Things going well for him. Doesn't necessarily need to throw in back-to-back games per Aaron Boone to be activated. Again, he was part of the Somerset squad, as we called it. But proverbially has been lights out with Somerset as well. Things trending in the right direction there. To piggyback off of that, a couple of the other pitchers with the Double-A rehab stuff. Lou Trevino, things have been positive this week as opposed to the last couple weeks with him rehabbing. Some positive news, and looks like there's some improvement going on with him at Double-A, with Somerset as well. And then things have been going so well for Clark Schmidt. He's joined Triple-A Scranton Wilkes-Barre, threw for them last night, I believe it was, but I didn't see anything really indicating one way or another about how the Yankees felt about the outing itself. But for him, things have looked really good anyway in these rehab outings that I don't think I'd be outright concerned one way or another with him.
Yeah, it's I think 6 innings now, 1 run. Moved up to AAA last night, so a little bit harder. And his final strikeout, I don't know if you saw it. It came on the replay. And so he finished with, I think, 5.
Out it.
Yep. So yeah, he's looked good, and I think they said at least 1 more. I think he's going to probably do 2 more, because again, he only was at 58 last night, and you kind of want to get to 70 probably, and then 90 maybe.
Yeah,
And then bring him.
ideally.
But maybe they'll bring him early at 70 and just let him at least go 4 innings in a game because, why not?
Yeah. Now, the one guy in rehab assignment right now that has not been doing as well as they had hoped performance-wise, John Birdie. Again, joined Double-A Somerset for his stuff recently. 1 home run, batting 176, though. Has not been great for him. I would imagine they'll give him more of a runway here as he comes back from his IL stuff. However, if there is one negative here, it'd probably be with him and his performance so far.
John Birdie, DJ LeMahieu. John Birdie, 100 times out of 100. Yeah. But I get what you're saying. Also, why is Oswaldo Cabrera not getting any starts?
Yeah.
I know they were left-handed starters in the series, but if you look, Oswaldo's been hitting every time he starts.
Yeah.
And how long can they really seriously go with DJ? Look at the Dodgers, who they DFA'd recently. Yeah. They've cut ties with some bigger names. Jason Hayward being one. I would consider him a bigger name. He's not a nobody. They can't just say, all right, take the L and move on.
Yeah.
Like he's actually hurting them. He made mistakes in the field last night as well. Made a mistake the other night, botched a ground ball. Like, this guy used to be a great defender, and he used to be a really good hitter, and he's like totally disappeared.
Yeah.
And if you can DFA Aaron Hicks, you can DFA DJ LeMahieu.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the time has pretty much come. I mean, it's well past, but yeah, I think it kind of depends here too, like what fully happens with Birdie. I don't know if they'll give him opportunity at Scranton or not. I would imagine they would, but yeah, I don't see how at this point you can just continuously run with that.
What's crazy is this is what's going to happen. They're going to keep DJ around, and they're going to send Oswaldo back as the corresponding move for Birdie, which is just ridiculous.
No, I wouldn't be down with that.
No, but they're just... Boone tries to cover for him so much. Like, it's not just Boone trying to play him every night.
Yeah.
He's got people telling him, he's got to be out there. And he said he pinched hit Oswaldo last night, so the ball wasn't hit on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, you think this guy has a 55% ground ball percentage.
Yeah.
Among the highest in the league.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you can cover him anymore.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly there. All right, Phil Bickford, kind of mentioned, the bullpen stuff here. Phil Bickford signed to a major league contract. Mike Tonkin was designated for assignment and has since been claimed by the Twins. Has not been great for Tonkin, really going back to the end of June if you really want to do some deep number stuff, but really as of late it had gotten rough. Again, go back to a lot of things here with, I think a lot of this has to do with some, depth within the bullpen. Guys get strained out. not a lot of room for rest. Tonkin was a guy that was used a ton, obviously, as we know. I think, I know at one point he was the 8th best Yankee by WAR this year at one point. So it's just tough. I mean, I think there's some stuff that the Yankees were able to figure out with him, and then obviously not so much. And then we see Phil Bickford come back into the New York baseball scene here with the Yankees.
Yeah, I don't know why everyone was so upset about Michael Tonkin the other day when that happened. Yeah, he was solid, but nothing to be like, oh my God, why did they do that? I guess maybe it's because the corresponding move was Bickford, who has only pitched once since then, and that was last night or 2 nights ago. But yeah, this bullpen's going to be totally reshuffled. I don't know why everyone keeps looking at it. There's going to be so many reinforcements. I would say at least 3 different names are going to be in there very soon.
Yeah, and plus, obviously Hamilton, I think, is the main player there. And then obviously maybe you get Trevino back to some degree, stuff like that. The interesting move here I found was outfielder Duke Ellis claimed off waivers from the Mariners, option to AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre. We've hypothesized a couple weeks ago, right, Kyle, about the whole entire pinch runner thing. He might be that guy for the Yankees in the postseason. He's on the 40-man by obviously the September 1st deadline. He doesn't hit for power or anything like that, but he has a ton of stolen bases in the minors this year for the Mariners. I would imagine he possibly could be that guy. I don't know. I think it's, again, might be a little bit more of a depth piece, kind of like that deal with, why am I forgetting his name? Cam Eden, there we go, from when the Yankees claimed him off of Toronto. So I don't know really here what to kind of expect. Again, I think it's just a depth thing. I think people might be reading a bit too deep into it.
Yeah, wow, 134 stolen bases in 273 minor league games.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So
it is the minor leagues.
Maybe the people are onto something. I just think it's people are just reading way too deep into it.
51 this year.
Yeah.
Split up between a couple teams, but yeah. Crazy. Maybe.
All right, the Yankees off today, home against the Cardinals over the weekend, then back on the road heading to Texas for 3 games next week. Pretty big games here. I know what people might kind of be thinking, right? These teams aren't obviously sitting at the top of their divisions or anything like that. But we know what the Rangers can do. We also know what the Cardinals can do. The best option available to me is I don't see sweeps in either one of these series. I see two of 3 each way through for the Yankees, and I think that's the best case scenario here. Worst case is kind of this performance we've seen against the Nationals carry over in both these series. If that's the case, we might be coming back here next Thursday and be really kind of questioning what this team can fully do here in the stretch run and into the playoffs, obviously. But I remain hopeful that it's, we come out this time next week and say 2 of 3 against the Cardinals and 2 of 3 against the Rangers.
Yeah, well, we can definitely say Saturday is a loss of Will Warren, and it's totally fair. He is not good in any start, and he's faced some bad teams worse than the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. The Cardinals surprisingly only 1 game under 500.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say they lose. I'm gonna say they lose 2 of 3 in this series. They're bad at home, too. I don't understand it. They're the best team on the road and towards the bottom 12 in the league at home. Mm-hmm. And then, the Rangers played the Yankees very tough earlier this month. I don't know, man. Mm-hmm. But they play so well on the road, so I'll say they lose 1 or 2 out of 3 against St. Louis and take 2 of 3 from the Rangers.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, let's get to the Mets. Mentioned they've had also numerically average week in that sense, but certainly a couple things to kind of get into here. Split with San Diego, 2-2 in that 4-game series, and they're split at the moment with Arizona. Rubber match today there. We mentioned how big these games were for the Mets, and at the moment it's just kind of been status quo because of the splits so far. They get this game today against Arizona. It kind of changes a little bit, I think, of the perceived vision here going into the weekend. You will have liked to obviously have gotten 3 of 4 against San Diego. It doesn't happen. Look good, all things considered. But, and we'll get to this more in a second just because of what happened last night in that Mets game. But, a lot left on the table for the Mets in these two pivotal series so far.
Yeah, I just kind of got caught off guard here. I didn't realize they were 4 out now.
Yeah.
And in danger of being passed by the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is why not only was this road series just important and overall, but the teams that like last night they lost to is in front of them. They can't do that.
Yep.
So yeah, today is huge. Because it could potentially be 5 by the end of the night, and then you're like, wow, we gotta start rolling again, or else we might be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't think the Cubs are gonna make the playoffs, but
No.
they've been putting up a lot of runs,
Yeah.
and
They've been playing better.
I'm sure you've seen that wild comeback yesterday against the Pirates, which, geez, Pittsburgh, you've definitely fallen off quite a bit. They do this every year. They start off pretty decent and totally collapse at the end of the year.
Yeah, Derek Shelton should probably be getting that coaching resume ready, I would say. It's interesting here. Edwin Diaz with another blown save last night. Obviously nowhere near the Clay Holmes total.
Half, 6.
Correct, but his struggles have come in blocks this year. You go back to obviously that June block, and this most recent block is now mirroring that block. Blew a save in San Diego, blew a save last night against the Diamondbacks, and Carlos Mendoza came out in support of him, right? Obviously, he's not going to sit here and say, I would not do that again. Backed him up, said I would go to him again and stuff like that. But there is some worry, right, with him that you don't want that full June implosion to occur at such a pivotal time. I don't know, in a hypothetical scenario, do we see him today in like a 4-3 game in the 9th for the Mets? I don't know. I also don't know if they have a full better option in a sense, right, than him. I mean, obviously you could do a Ottavino or somebody like that who's been in these high leverage situations before. But what does that maybe give the message to Diaz in a sense? I don't know. It's the main thing I look at though is, you mentioned, right, the situation, Kyle, in the standings. You're 4 games out. You're still well within the hunt of this deal, and you're going against a team that's ahead of you in the standings. It's hard not to have a little bit of concern to some degree with Diaz as it stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds good overall, but they really can't finish this trip 500, and they're at that right now. They have to be better than that in order to gain ground and stay where they need to be. And yeah, Diaz, he was coming in for a 4-out save, just needed to, get the final out of the 8th, and he comes in and throws 8 of the 10 pitches for balls, and then hangs a slider, at the bottom of the zone. And Corbin Carroll, who I think has been a little bit better lately, but does not have the numbers that he should have this year.
Correct.
Just destroys it. You can't have blown saves at this point of it. I know they happen, but just it's a bad spot to have that happen against this team in this wild card race.
And it's tough right now because the offense really is clicking for the most part on all cylinders. Sean Manaea talked about after his start on Tuesday about how it's nice that he has, the offense kind of backing him up because he knows that he's not this fireball guy who's going to shut lineups out every time, right? But he knows that he's got the lineup behind him that he can give up a couple runs and he doesn't necessarily have to worry about that. And, and that's kind of like what I mean when I have this concern in a way, right? Like it was a 5-4 ball game that the Mets had last night. And look, Corbin Carroll's in the middle, all things considered, even though he's been better lately. He's in the middle smack dab of a classic sophomore slump. And, he even said, even with that grand slam last night, that he had kind of no idea that it really was actually tracking to go out the whole time. So what does that kind of tell you in a sense of like what he's dealing with compared to what you as a team with the Mets are going up against, right? Kind of a saying that I took from the summer team with this year that I'll apply here, just like don't play with your food, right? If you're Diaz, just kind of go with what you know, and I'm sure he obviously would have that pitch back, and re-rack and go again. But, the fact of the matter is he's got to kind of reset himself and maybe have the opportunity to go. And maybe that's a conversation that they had last night. If you're the Mets, right? Maybe today will just kind of be a designated off day, no matter what form. Even if there is a scenario where you'd rather have them out there saving, but just for the mental reset element of it, you just give them the day off and go with somebody else.
Yeah, and it's also tough because the offense bailed Luis Severino out, who gave up four.
True.
They
Yeah.
came back from a 4-0 deficit, scored 5 straight to give them the lead. And again, you're 4 outs away from a huge, another huge road
Guaranteed
win.
series win last night with it.
Yeah, and Diaz comes in and just walks 2, and that loads the bases because Maton put one on before that, and he served up a grand slam. Just bad.
Yep. Let's look at some positive light here, though, for the Mets. Obviously, we don't know what this guy's future is going to be with the team, but Pete Alonso moves into a tie at third place in the series against Arizona with Mike Piazza for career homers as a Met. Kind of crazy to think about, given he's only been there, in the grand scheme of it, right? 6.5, 7 seasons technically, depending upon how you look at the 2020 season. But it always kind of throws me off. The Mets are one of these franchises that can't seem to get people to hang around often. Obviously, you know Don LaGreca, right?
Yep.
So, he's a Mets fan, radio host with Michael Kay. And I just always go back to this one rant he had the one time where the lifelong best Met of all time is Ed Bleepin Kranepool. And I feel bad for Ed Kranepool being dragged into something like this, but there's an element of truth to that. And so anytime something like this happens, I always look at it, I'm like, damn, that's crazy, at the same token of how cool it is, because Darryl Strawberry walks. David Wright, different, but, injury kind of derails him, right? Jose Reyes walked. It's one of those things where it's like, and now you're probably staring down the barrel of Pete Alonso walking, in all honesty, as he moves up into being one of your kind of hallmark power guys in your history.
Well, as the great Frank Fleming says,
Oh, boy.
Pete Alonso cares more about his home runs and winning the home run derby
I don't disagree.
than he does about winning.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that I disagree. The way he acts, he just seems like he's a homer happy guy.
Yeah.
And I guess that's fine for some players, but I would rather see you be a team first guy, and I'm not really sure if his character fits that. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just not sure his, motivation to win, like, for example, Aaron Judge is there. The way he talks is totally different than how Aaron Judge talks. He doesn't care about the records. He wants to go win, where Pete Alonso likes to really dive into when he breaks a record or, does something homer-wise.
Yeah.
So I think Frank is, right. He watches the team every day, just like I watch the Yankees every day. So, you have to listen to his take, and I think it's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you look at it, and I kind of go back to one of the things I always talk about with the clubhouse with the Mets, like Lindor, who's an outsider in a sense, right? Now, obviously, he's not an outsider, but, wasn't brought up in the organization, kind of be the clubhouse leader. Should really be a guy like Pete Alonso when you think about it, and it's just not. So,
yeah, and I'm not saying he, wants to go lose. Nobody wants to go lose.
No.
I'm just saying you can just tell it's not like extreme, like, oh, I don't care as long as we win. It's just like,
think about the All-Star weekend this year.
Yeah. I still can't believe how bad that performance was.
Yeah. So, hey, either way, though, congratulations. I mean, it's a big accomplishment, right? I mean,
Yeah, he's still a good hitter.
for a while and everything, so there's that. All right, let's get to some updates here on the Mets injury report. Daniel Nunez, as soon as he came back, is already being temporarily shelved. He's not on the injured list yet, but he's dealing with forearm tightness, not recovering well in between outings, per Carlos Mendoza. Team evaluated him, instructed him not to speak with the media as well in regards to this. So the Mets, minus a bullpen piece, and no exact roster move for it. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. I'm guessing they're going to try and just give him a couple extended days rest, but I don't know about this at this point, Kyle, because we talked about the Deadwood Diaz situation. Are you putting a different look at the bullpen here? Would be nice to at least have one of your arms available to go to if needed.
Yeah, the Mets have had some like weird stuff go on with their pitchers. I know recovering between starts does happen around the league. It just seems like the Mets are dealing with more of that kind of stuff, like mechanics. We've been hearing
Yeah.
with pitchers. Now we're hearing not recovering between starts, and then he's told not to talk to the media. And I saw Anthony DeComo, MLB.com, said he walked out a back door to escape the media. There was actually a tweet about it last night. I'm like, what? Like, why?
It's weird.
When guys, go on the IL, they usually talk about, their kind of like their timeline and, where exactly how the injury occurred.
Yeah.
And you're not letting him speak to the media. I just thought that was a little bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's a really strange situation with him, right? Because they just activated him quite literally 6 days ago. And I don't know. It's weird. Weird. Paul Blackburn on the IL, but kind of avoided a major injury here. Took a line drive, 100-mile-per-hour line drive off his hand from David Peralta in San Diego. Only contusion. It's on his throwing hand, the right hand. Only has a contusion. The IL placement, though, is more for what they're calling pain management and stuff like that. No broken bones, no nothing. So, like I said, escaped a really major issue there. Tyler Magel was called back up from Syracuse to take a spot in the rotation. They're hoping it's just the 15 days and he'll be activated and back to normal. So, obviously, sucks no matter what here, but big news is probably more or less the fact that he avoided a major injury from the line drive.
Yeah, and that's one of your trade deadline acquisitions. And I thought he was solid for the most part. I think he had maybe one bad start you would classify it as, but overall it seemed like he gave the Mets a decent start. And I think they'd love to get him back very soon.
Sean Reed Foley has not restarted his rehab assignment yet. Carlos Mendoza has outright said his season's in jeopardy as it stands right now. We mentioned, right, he's the guy who has been doing some mechanics and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to kind of see whether or not we'll get going with him. Positive note, Christian Scott throwing some off-speed work, mainly his changeup and flat ground work as it stands right now. So Mets are hopeful he'll be back by the end of the season. Kind of in a similar vein to another pitcher we'll get to in a minute here, but obviously avoided Tommy John surgery with his UCL, which is the big thing, and now kind of building off flat ground work and getting going and amping up.
Yeah, I just feel like that might be tough to get him back. I mean, 3 more days or September 1st, and he's still only on flat ground. He's got bullpens to go, face hitters.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough to get him back.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Kodai Senga hasn't started playing catch yet. However, the Mets are hopeful coming off this calf strain that he would be available for a potential playoff run. Kind of seems like there's a little bit of possibility for that, although me and you kind of talked about when the injury first happened, the calf strain, we don't expect him to be back, though. But apparently something's changed within the past week or so that has given the Mets some hope that he could be potentially available should playoff run happen.
And that would be a wild story if the Mets did, make it like past the wild card round and he was a part of the rotation, in the NLDS. I think it would be cool.
No, it would be the wild card round, technically.
Well, yeah, if they got past if they got past the wild card.
True, yeah. Jet Williams started a rehab assignment with Single A St. Lucie, one of the top prospects for the Mets. He'd been out and dealing with injuries for a whole year pretty much. Huskar Brazoban optioned and then already recalled from AAA Syracuse, and then some really more not truly breaking news here, but Brett Beatty broke his finger with Syracuse yesterday. The fear is that his season is gonna be over, which would be potentially pretty big. I mean, this is a spot where the Mets maybe call him up when the rosters expand in a few days. Obviously, be one of the first guys in the line anyway if a guy got hurt to take the spot on the roster at the big league level. Just a tough way, more than likely, for your season to end if you're Brett Beatty and the Mets.
Yeah, and that's on top of, their other prospect getting hurt, Ronnie Mauricio, which was a while ago. I'm just pointing out the fact that, they have 2 really young, exciting players that have gotten hurt, and it's just unfortunate.
Yep. All right, for the Mets, obviously the rubber match today against the Diamondbacks, then turn the focus to Chicago, 3 games against the White Sox, and then right on the heels of that, they host the Red Sox for 3 games in New York. So very a clothing-oriented weekend and week ahead for the Mets. Look, I'm going to go do the Red Sox one first because it's a little bit deeper. Red Sox are faltering at the moment. You got to get 2 of 3 against them. And easily enough, for the love of all things holy for the Mets, you got to sweep the White Sox. Going back to what we talked about last week, say with the Yankees, this is a must-have series, obviously. You cannot, go back to what I said about the DSing. You can't play with your food. Like, for the love of all things holy, handle business against a team that you should crush, all things considered, and handle business and put yourself in position with not under, but you're under 30 games to go and just slightly over 30 days away from the end of the season, right? So if you're the Mets, these are the games that you got to have and got to figure out. If we're back here next Thursday and I'm talking anything less than I feel like, in my opinion, with them 5 of 6, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to be doing,
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think though that the Red Sox are getting 2 of 3.
Wow.
Yeah, I just they did lose 5 in a row, then they won the last 2 against Toronto. Toronto's bad too, but I don't know. I think the Red Sox are due for a nice little series win.
Sheesh.
And then I will say they sweep the White Sox, which is kind of going to irritate me because the other New York team's going to sweep them, but the Yankees couldn't.
Fair.
But they probably will. So, yeah, that's how I think it's going to go.
That is fair.
And actually, I should have reversed it. Like you said, you started with the Red Sox first. It's reverse. It's White Sox, Red Sox.
No, right.
My bad.
Because of just how blunt and easy it should be for the White Sox, I just put them last. So, all right, let's get to Rochester and Syracuse quick. Rochester in the midst of actually their worst 5-game stretch of the year. Lost 5 straight, and 4 of the 5 have been within 2 runs or less. Just brutal stuff for them. But that's baseball sometimes. They're still in a good spot here potentially for the playoff runs. They fall the 4th, 5.5 games back, though. In Scranton, Wilkes-Barre this week, home against Worcester next week. The big thing for them ended up being Dylan Cruz getting called up, getting selected by Washington. Really weird how that one happened. It was over the weekend, but didn't happen technically until Monday. Either way, Riley Adams was optioned back from Washington. Drew Millis was recalled to Washington. So was reliever Orlando Ribalta. And then outfielder Andrew Pinckney was assigned from AA Harrisburg there. For Rochester, they're still doing fine. It's just one of those things where you're just kind of caught in the middle of this rough patch. And unfortunately, it's just kind of coming at a really tough time of the season to be having it.
Yeah, so looking here, I think that's a typo, right? It says Rochester's 3rd in the IL.
Are you looking at the division or the league?
The division.
Yeah, if you look at the league, they're 4th.
Okay. Yeah. So, wow, Scranton, Rochester, all very tight. Wow.
Yeah.
30-win teams.
Yeah.
And they finished the season earlier, as always.
By like a week. It's not
it's
by
like
a
the
ton.
22nd, and
Yeah.
I think MLB's 28th or 29th. So, yeah, that's what I meant earlier about Christian Scott. Like, how is he going to get into rehab games if, minor league season is going to be over in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
He hasn't even thrown a bullpen yet.
My guess with that would be something, just hypothesizing, live batting practice, like legitimate sim game type stuff would be my guess, but who knows. Speaking of that, Syracuse 16th in the International League, 12 games back, looking a bit more bleaker there. Syracuse and Lehigh Valley this week, and then return home next week against Scranton Wilkes-Barre. So either way, some important games for Syracuse still nonetheless to fight on through. The only roster news there that we haven't touched on, the Eddie Rosario experience only lasted a week. Granted his release over the weekend. So
He's fallen off quite a bit.
yeah, it's tough. I didn't see if he picked up another contract anywhere. It's a good point. I mean, last year league average hitter, this year completely off the table, and I think somebody might give him just a shot here, like in a way, but I don't know if anybody would. But that's hypothesizing for a different podcast for a different team.
Yeah, let's get through these final 4 weeks of games. I'm ready for playoff baseball. I'll make a prediction here.
Go ahead.
I'm worried about the Yankees winning the division. I just think they've let the Orioles hang around, and that's not good.
Right.
And looking at the schedules, you would say the Yankees should win the division. They're not taking care of these teams. I have this wild thought that the Orioles and Yankees are going to finish with the same amount of wins and losses. But the tiebreaker is going to go to the Orioles because they're going to take the season series.
Right.
That's my prediction here. Same record, Orioles win the division by tiebreaker.
Sheesh.
Wild. And infuriating, considering if they just won a couple of these games. But what are you going to do?
It's
Just probably another year they just don't do much. And it's okay to think like that because we've dealt with a lot of
fair
playoff disasters as a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
So you just hope it's different, but you just see that, games like these, it's like, wow, how is this team going to win a playoff series?
It's fair. Yeah.
But
But
it does feel like a whole totally different season when that comes.
Yeah.
Totally different rosters.
Yeah.
Just feels different.
different energy.
Yeah.
100%.
More pumped up every pitch.
Right.
So hopefully this is the year. Mets Yankees would be the dream while we were doing this podcast if they ever met in the World Series, man.
Subway Series. Bring it back.
Incredible.
Shout out 2000. All right, so that's what we'll do for Concrete Jungle for this week. Back at it again next week. I believe we'll be good to go on Thursday again next week because both Mets and Yankees are actually off next Thursday. So how about that?
And we have football. Thursday night football next week.
Thursday
1 week
night-
away.
Thursday night football, Friday night football, college obviously on Saturday. But yeah, the NFL season starts. College football's already started. It's a busy time of year for sure.
It's going to be very fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Yep. Lots of stuff going on. So everybody enjoy Labor Day weekend. Have a safe and fun one. The unofficial end of summer.
Forgot about that, too. Wow.
Unofficial end of summer is upon us. Crazy. But hey, that'll do it for Concrete Jungle for this week. Back at it again next Thursday. We'll talk with everybody then.